Hi, I'm Lauren Ruff with Padilla Smith & Tolbert in Springdale, Arkansas. Hi, I'm Lauren Ruff with Padilla Smith & Tolbert in Springdale, Arkansas, and I'm an attorney. Death is the end of life. I know that when my grandmother died, there were a lot of preparations last minute that had to be made. We had a service to coordinate, and a lot of things that we hadn't thought about. As an attorney, I often advise people to make a will, to take care of certain assets before death. But burial is not something that we often talk about. And frankly, I think it's something that we need to talk about. Every person should have a plan. Certainly, Arkansas does not require that you embalm a body. Natural burial is perfectly acceptable. There are some limits on how you bury the body and where you bury the body, but embalming is not required. For instance, some cities can refuse to allow you to bury a body inside their city limits. That's within their power as a city. Some people, of course, would like to bury relatives on their own property. Well, in Arkansas, you can't do that without having a registered cemetery. And that's why you see a lot of family cemeteries on individual properties as you drive through Arkansas. Yes, you have to get your registered cemetery approved and registered. There is a state board of cemeteries here in Arkansas that can help you with that if you're interested in doing that. There are some recording requirements for where the body is buried and when it is buried there. The Arkansas Board of Cemeteries does have a registry, and you have to follow the registration requirements for each bodies. And should you move a body, you also have to re-register. You have to comply with the laws of the state where the body is going to be buried. And of course, in transporting a body, you are transporting potentially hazardous materials. So there are certain Department of Transportation requirements for transporting a body that you do have to follow. And almost all funeral homes are equipped to deal with that and can walk you through the process. There are certain notification requirements in Arkansas in the instances of certain types of death. What we normally would do would be to either call the sheriff's office and let them know, or call perhaps the county coroner and let them know. But if you have a relative who has died at home, there are 3 entities that will have to be notified of the death, and often a funeral home will go ahead and take that step. They will have to notify the prosecutor's office, the county coroner's office, and the county sheriff's office, especially if the death is suspicious in any way. Now, some deaths may not seem suspicious, but fall under the law as something that still has to be reported. For instance, when my grandmother died, she was terminally ill, but she had not seen a doctor in quite a while because she was 94 years old. At 94 years old, she had pain relief, she was comfortable at home, but we still had to notify because she hadn't seen a doctor within 30 days. Generally speaking, you can do it yourself, but it is a difficult and detailed process, and you have to make certain that you are following the law. This is why a burial and death plan is important to form ahead of time, so that you can come consult an attorney or even a funeral home and speak to them about the steps that you need to take. Now, when taking things upon yourself, you're assumed to know the law. so you can still be prosecuted for violations. You can certainly take these steps. There are some things that you must be aware of ahead of time, and that is if you have the death of a veteran, there are certain reporting requirements for that death. There are certain requirements with the death of children as well. So in planning your own death, in planning your own burial, it is a very smart decision to go and talk to some of these entities and speak to them about your burial plan and your death plan. Because yes, you can do it all from home. It is possible to do, but it is difficult to maneuver. It does take a lot of time, and you must be very detail-oriented.
And so,
Okay. Certainly, certain entities, especially hospitals, do have policies in place for releasing a body because that body can indeed be a human health hazard. So those policies you are going to have to work around, and you are going to have to put plans in place to deal with those policies if you wish to have a natural home burial. Now, as for investigations, death investigations, the state will come and take the body and investigate. Of course, we all see things on television about post-mortem investigations and homicide. And when the state does that, there are certain things put in place. First of all, they must notify the family where the body is. If the family asks, they have to tell you they still have the body. They do not have a time frame with which they have to give the body back. This, of course, is because a lot of death investigations are very complex, very long-going, and are very detail-oriented, often requiring more than one examiner and more than one professional to actually work on the body. Now, when that body is taken, of course, they will hold it and do what procedures they need to do, and can return the body back to you. You will have to sign a release for it and claim the body. There may be costs involved with claiming that body from the state, such as transportation. But on the reverse side, if there is a death investigation, you cannot embalm the body prior to the investigation. So a lot of these things move very, very quickly. It may seem overwhelming. Where did my loved one's body go? Oh my gosh, they just took them to Little Rock. Well, the reason for that is that embalming actually affects the scientific testing and investigation. It affects the tissues in the body. As we all know, there are reasons that we don't wish to embalm, and they often are those same reasons. So they will take that body very, very quickly. The state will try to use their best efforts to get their investigation done as quickly as possible. And I have found in my practice that the state is very, very understanding and very embracing of different people's beliefs and cultural ideas about burial and death. But there will be a delay where an investigation is taking place. That is not something that should concern a person. However, you can call and check on that body and find out what the status of the body is. They will not tell you the status of the investigation, but they will tell you where the body is housed. There are a few interesting items. Arkansas is one of a few states, and it's part of a new trend that allows biodegradable caskets. You can use biodegradable caskets, otherwise known as coffins, to bury your loved one and be environmentally conscious. Vaults are not required in Arkansas, and many states for several years, even decades, required vaults. Arkansas does not, which can make it much cheaper to bury. But speak to your funeral director or your funeral home about the benefits of having a vault. You may decide you want one. You may decide that you don't. Some other things that have come into the news recently are protesting at funerals. Arkansas does not allow protesting at a funeral. You have to be a certain distance from the funeral in order to protest. You cannot block entrances or exits to the funeral. Also, you cannot, on the funeral grounds, protest 30 minutes before, during, or 30 minutes after the funeral service. Well, actually, there are restrictions that come from the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, about water burial. And Arkansas does not list very much about it. So again, speak to your funeral home if you would like to do this. There are restrictions on burial of crematorium or ashes. There are some restrictions in place there, and different townships even have their own rules about it. For instance, if you go to a town in western Arkansas, they may say, well, you can't spread anything in our city parks. But a town in eastern Arkansas might say, sure, it's fine. You have to check with the individual place where you wish to spread the ashes, if it is legal to spread those ashes there. I strongly caution people about national parks and state parks. There are rules. Speak to them. Often there are ways you can go about spreading those ashes. With water burial, it's the same thing. Speak to your local water authorities. Speak to your funeral homes. There are certain federal regulations about what you put in the water, and what you can and can't do there, because it can be a human health hazard. It can be a serious environmental hazard.